Welcome to the lab. In this video, we're going to be painting up Radukar the Wolf. This is going to be my 4th paint job ever. And in true fashion of this channel, I'm going to try a bunch of new things on this thing. I'm just getting into Warhammer, so I don't know a ton of the lore yet. But a couple of things we should know about this mini that might influence how I paint this guy. He is the leader, or ruler, not quite sure yet, of the cursed city of Ulfenkarn. 1. He is the big bad guy of this box, and he looks rad, so I'm painting him first. 2. He is one of the Soul Blight, meaning he's a vampire. So we're going to have to paint some undead flesh on this guy. 3. Because he's a vampire, means he's probably not hanging out in the sun a lot. So my main focus for this mini is to see if I can actually paint him to look like he's hanging out at nighttime rather than the day. I've got a couple of ideas of how to pull that off. Hopefully it won't ruin the mini, but I think it should turn out okay. We'll see. We'll see. I'm just testing, winging it here. Since nighttime was my goal, and I've never painted anything in nighttime before, I went to Google in search of some images to see if I could find anything of nighttime photos, which was kind of a bust. I asked around in a couple of painting discords, and they pointed me in the right directions of how light works and stuff. And then I also found a few videos and a couple of good suggestions from people to look at movies. So I went in search of a few different reference photos to get an idea of what the colors look like at nighttime that we accept as people watching a film. Obviously, the lighting is false for most movies, but it still reads as night, and that's what I'm trying to go for. I don't necessarily need it to look 100% realistic moon shadows. I still want some color to show through and everything. So, let's see if we can pull it off. The plan is to get a similarly looking result using dark sea blue for the shadows, black for the deepest of shadows, and then highlight everything as much as I can to get it really bright, and then when I think the mini is finished, give it a soft spray of teal ink, and hopefully not ruin everything. And that should get the bluish, silvery tint that we see in a lot of movies. The B-side story of this video. Little tricky to film. I'm still learning camera foo, and I definitely need to figure out a good camera placement in order to get minis filmed correctly. Needless to say, with this big floofy hair that I got going on, sitting over here painting, the top-down view wasn't great. I had it in the middle, and then every now and then I would have to lean over to see what was going on, and, well, I'll show you. You see my chair? You see how it looks? Now can you see the chair? Is this okay? How's this look? Is this fine? Yeah, no, it probably didn't work too well. That happened a lot during the filming. Also, I only just noticed after pulling all the footage off, when I got my views and I double-checked a couple of the clips, the short clips I used to check the camera angle that I ended up settling with, which was like in front of my forehead. I had the camera here, so I knew if I bonked my head on it, was leaning in too far. That autofocus may have not been the way to go. There is quite a bit of footage where my camera decided to not focus on the mini in my hand that I was clearly painting, but to refocus on the wet palette in the background. So then my mini's out of focus, and we get really nice view of the paint sitting there, doing nothing. There's a bunch of usable footage, and it's not like this video is going to be 2 hours long. I'm going to cut out what I can, and you'll see the process that I went through. But it's just a little frustrating, because I'm sure there's points where it's faded out, where I did something that I could show you, and now it's just not there anymore. But learning process, please forgive me. Alright, while I'm priming here, I'll have to tell you a couple of things I forgot to do. The most important of which is that I forgot to take notes. So I didn't actually log all the time that I had in this place, but it was roughly about 15 hours, give or take. Alright, here I started off by picking a color that I thought would work for a fed vampire flesh tone. I wanted my vampire to look undead, but not like the rest of the undead that will be in the Soul Blight army. I wanted him distinctly different than zombies and skeletons and such. I took that dark sea blue and I mixed it in slowly, adding more and more to make areas darker so I could separate shadows between the fingers and underneath the hand, along the cheekbones, above the eyes, those kinds of areas. There is my hair, showing you exactly. I'm sure you can see me painting the teeth and everything on his face real well there. Here's me highlighting some of the flesh. One of the things I was trying to improve while doing this paint job was how I use contrast in a paint job. Really wanted to improve getting my highlights much brighter than my shadows. And I think it worked alright here and there. I have a ways to go still. I still think the colors can be much brighter and much darker. But I also was trying to work on improving my edge highlighting, so I painted the cloak a green, and you saw I used dark sea blue again for the shadows in the cloak, which I think look really awesome. I think that color combo just works really well for that cloth. And then I kind of glazed up white from the edge highlight up the higher points of the cloak. Then I base coated everything in a dark red for his pants, since they were going to be red. And from there, I again mixed in dark sea blue for some of the darkest areas, and then I got a brighter red to bring out the initial highlights on the red pants so that it didn't immediately become pink. And then I used that bright red for his eyes. I wanted glowing red eyes. I don't know, it just felt right to have those. And then I used a mixture of that and the dark red for the wounds in his chest. And then I decided that the highlights on the red weren't bright enough. So I went in with a bit more of the bright red, and I even added a little bit of white into it. Don't ever be afraid to go back to a part of the mini that you just don't like and correct it more. I also painted his beard black, gave that a looks like really poor edge highlight of some white just to show the separation. And then I took some dark brown and I put that on all the leather, highlighted it with a lighter brown using sketches to make it look like worn leather. And then for the boots and the dagger that's on his belt, I painted black, and I edge highlighted it in a mixture of the dark sea blue with a bunch of white in it. Since that's the same color I'm using as the shadows, it made sense that the black, when it's highlighted, would show that color too. Then I coated all the gold everywhere, and I painted the sword, a couple of different steel colors, and brown. I used the same browns I used for the leather on the hat that he's wearing. And then this is the first time I've ever painted fur, so another first for this mini, including the hat. This is the first time any hair basically like that. So I was practicing using lined brush strokes to bring out the highlights, similar to the leather, but following the curve of the hairs and the fur. And I think I really liked how it looked. I need to improve on it, another thing that needs to get better, but I think that's the right step to do that. I've watched a few other people do that online, and it's amazing how much texture can come out in a model just from a little trying. I also practiced a lot of wet blending on that fur. You saw me do that too in that spot. That's something else I haven't done a lot of, so... Hey, look! More hair in the way! Just used some super glue, sand, and some rocks that I had. Woodland Scenics rocks. Super glue set. More wet blending on the base. Anywhere I could practice it, I did. I used dark sea blue and the dark brown to get the shadows on the mud there, and then I brushed it with the light brown, even a little bit of white. And then I painted the rocks gray with an edge highlight of a lighter gray. And then the roots that were down there, I just painted the brown and kind of brushed some brighter brown over it. One of the things I do have to really praise GW about is the texture makes similar colors look like different things, which is cool. I put some dark reds and a bright orange on the sword to make it look rusted in the eaten area. And then I used some of the bright silver again to brush it up to make it look like the sword's either been sharpened again or been in use and had some fresh scratches put in. Then I decided to maybe ruin my mini. I used the teal ink and I gave it a brush down with my airbrush from a great distance. And here they are side by side, pre-teal on the left, after teal on the right. And you can see the major differences here and how that teal really brings it down to look like nighttime. You know, all in all, I'm really happy with the result of how that came out. He turned out, honestly, way better than I thought he would. I personally think he reads like he's at night, and while I'm not going to paint the rest of the game or even my Soulblight army when I finally get my hands on some of those models like they're at night, I know that I can at least achieve a similar result if I ever want to do another model like that in the future, or even a bust. There's some things that I would change about it. I may lighten the highlights even more, because even in movies the brightest highlights are still closer to white. So I think the teal and then my brightest highlights is probably a good call. Also, I had some people point out to me that reds really, really desaturate during nighttime, and they almost disappear if they're in the dark areas. So while the red did get dimmed in this, I think either don't use red on the mini or make sure that they become highly desaturated. But that's something that I don't even really know how to play with quite yet. I'll get there, but, you know, there's things that I can definitely improve on, especially for this type of effect. Regardless, again, really happy with this dude. Every time I look at him, I smile. Thank you so much for sticking to the end of this video. If you enjoyed watching and you want to see more, please like and subscribe. It really helps out. And until next time, experiment with your hobby.
Very nice people.